And thank you, Anthony and the others in the chat here for the support. Stephen, Anthony, and there was Brandon as well. Thank you, all of you, for your donations and support and super chats. Of course, we are on the back on the main channel, and we're about 10,000 subscribers additional since we were banned in January and the live feed was shut down. And so it's good to be back on the main channel. It's good to see all of the active chats in there. But what I was saying in the, well, that none of you heard was, I suspect, you know, well, this, I'm just going to start from the top. Jesse Spots had warned me that I shouldn't swim upstream in a series like this, and that we were going against the flow. And Lloyd and I are essentially setting off in this series to swim upstream to piss in people's cornflakes, people that have their agendas already set in going with a specific dialogue. And we are going to counter that dialogue with primary citations. This series will likely bring as much or more hatred down on my head as when I came out against the psychedelic counterculture as MK Ultra back in 2010, 11, and 12, and having the vitriolic attacks coming down on me for exposing all of that. I suspect that this will be no different than that. We're going to be going through a lot of primary citations that anyone can fact check themselves. So if you don't like what we're saying, you're just going to have to go fact check it rather than just spewing vitriol. But you know, it is what it is, and you know, we're not here to sell the official narrative that's okay with people. And thanks, Dashing Rogue. We are here to follow Logos and to tell the truth wherever the research takes us. And Lloyd and I, back in January, we started researching a number of the Talmud quotes that have been floating around, probably, I think it was since the 1890s. And they, you know, as we started digging into them, the majority of them are severely taken out of context. And that was a big shock to see, because I've been guilty myself of spreading these around, and we're going to try to differentiate Talmudic detractors from Jews who, you know, like Revelation 3:9, those who say they are Jews and are not but do lie. We're going to try to separate those who have sort of taken a segue from what the scriptures say and gone into an oral tradition. Tonight's show is going to be focused on the Torah rather than the Talmud, and we're going to be discussing the laws of Noah, otherwise known as the Noahide laws. And of course, there are a lot of conspiracies out there about the Noahide laws, about the Talmud, about the whole thing. So we're going to be going through all of these things and showing the original primary text. So again, we encourage everybody to fact check and go through these yourself and investigate yourselves. And in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen the mass exception of Jew bashing, just openly, without any reservation, clumping all Jews together, not separating out who or whom. Like let's say, for instance, about 10 years ago, I interviewed Rabbi David Weiss from Neturei Karta, and he's very anti-Zionist, Orthodox, etc. But you know, so we're going to be going into all of these avenues in this series. We suspect it'll probably be about 6 episodes, maybe, you know, maybe less, maybe more. And we might intersperse it with other material along the way. But so be prepared for getting your Cheerios or your cornflakes pissed in and having everything overturned. And we are going to be challenging the information that has been spread out there. And of course, we just ended our series on Islam last week. And, Mark Phonic Photon is asking, what is a good online link to follow along with?
I'm using a variety of...
Yeah, we're using dozens, maybe, possibly even hundreds of citations, so there isn't one. I guess this series will be the best link to follow along on, and we'll put it in a playlist.
Yeah. My notes will be on screen, so follow those. And but Jan knows how to get hold of you, so we can always furnish you with a set separately if you'd like of my notes.
Absolutely. And looks like we've already got a fairly good turnout. And what's that?
What are the numbers looking like?
Oh, we got almost 100 and we're 10 minutes in. So, and granted, this channel is throttled heavily. I mean, if it was a normal channel with nearly 70,000 subscribers, we'd have, probably 600 or 800 in there right now. Dashing Rogue says, can you make a Google Doc with the links?
Yeah. For those who are naughty, not nice, I'm sure I can supply the notes. Since you see my notes all typed up. So yeah, I guess that's possible. Jan already has a set of the first notes. You saw them that I emailed you, right, Jan?
Yeah, I've got them up here, in fact.
Okay.
So yeah. I have the notes. Ha ha. Yeah, so, we're going to try to... What was that quote you made the other day about, we're going to... A dyslexic, anorexic, whatever person trying to figure out if dog...
Dyslexic, agnostic.
Yeah.
Insomniac. I said dyslexic, agnostic, insomniac. Lies awake all night wondering if there really is a dog.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. No, as Jan was saying... someone sent us a link, or someone sent me a link with a whole bunch of Talmudic quotations, and there were 14 or 15 that were discussed. It was a book, and we'll get into that in a later show. And I was very curious, and I went and read most of those quotes directly out of the Talmud. And of the first 5 that I checked, 3 of them, there was no such book in the Jewish literature. The book did not exist. For another one, the verse did not exist. It referenced the verse number that did not exist because that chapter ended prior to that number. And then with some of the others, the verse was wrong.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit there.
I went to verse 5, and then I contacted Jan, and I said, hey, Jan. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, you're cutting out. Is there anything else running in the background? Make sure the video is paused, and I'll pause it on my side too. You got it?
Yeah, I've got nothing else running.
All right. Well, let's just keep plugging away. It might be on my side. Who knows? Everything is a new setup here, so new background, new everything. So
yeah. So I checked the first 5 citations. They all turned up false. Every single one turned up false. I contacted Jan. We then spent like another hour over the next few days, we spent several hours going through numerous of these Talmudic citations. And the bulk of them 90% of them turned out to be completely false. And we were like, hold on, but these are common Talmudic citations everyone is giving. They appear on hundreds of websites. There's whole lists of them.
I've spread them around myself, thinking that they were valid. In fact, they're probably in the database. And
so we went through them. So I started reading the Talmud, and I started finding different things to. So tonight, that we're not focusing on that tonight. That we will do an episode on that.
And I will go through, and I will in the next several weeks update the. I'm looking at the database now. They are still in the database, so we're going to be trying to update these with the factual ones. You can see that I've already updated a few of these in here, so we'll try to get them updated as we go. And you can see some of the false ones in here. A lot of these are completely made up. Some of them are partially true. Some of them are taken extremely out of context, and and somebody's saying, "Can you read Hebrew?" So
God speaks English.
God speaks English these days, and also there's such things as Google Translate. You can just copy and paste them into Google Translate and be able to read, what they actually say.
Just like Islam, these books have been translated into English. And don't forget, 85% of Muslims speak no Arabic. So what are they reading? So yeah, maybe. So that's it. So that's where we will go as we proceed. We will crack open the Talmud and start going through those citations, and you will see, I think, that the vast majority are completely false, and that'll be interesting because I will be giving you the links now. In the YouTube comments in the last few weeks, I have asked people who made these assertions, these claims, please cite me the Talmud. I have had nobody give me the actual Talmudic reference. It has not happened. Okay, no one is willing to give me. Now, with Islam, I have quoted the name of the author, the name of the book, the name of the passage, the chapter. I've given the verse, everything, so that people can look it up. I've shown links, I've put them online, I've showed where I get them. So everyone is able to go and see exactly what I'm saying. How come nobody is willing to provide me those very same citations for their Talmudic assertions? Why is that?
Yeah, and I watched that too, and I've asked people for citations too, and they entirely refuse to provide any of that. And I did mention, I don't know if my audio was working when I said that, but Stephen brings up Neturei Karta. I did interview Rabbi David Weiss from Neturei Karta back 9-10 years ago. Maybe I'll have him back sometime after the series to discuss what we expose here. And so anyway, let's dive in, and we've got a lot to expose and a lot to go through.
Yeah, so shall I start sharing my screen?
Yeah, go for it. Jump in.
Okay, so that's my main screen. Okay, should be popping up any second. Do you see it?
There it goes. And just so you know, you're not full screen. You've got your browser on one side there.
Yes, I know. I've got it split half and half.
All right.
Screen.
Cool.
Yeah, because in case I open anything up. Now, so, okay, first question, citations. I've got this up here. So a citation is a reference to a published or unpublished source, right? I've given hundreds of detailed citations while discussing Islam. It would be nice for those people who make assertions and claims about the Talmud to give me the cited sources, because there's the name of the book, there's the passage number, the chapter, the verse, the page. Why am I not getting that? So citations have important purposes: to uphold intellectual honesty or to avoid plagiarism. Now, that providing citations is specifically about intellectual honesty. So those people who refuse to provide citations, are you being, you're not being intellectually honest, right? You're just making an assertion that has no source. So the reader can then independently determine whether the reference material supports the argument in the way that is claimed, right? And check the strength and validity of the material that you've used if people are able to go back to your sources. Now, I have been meticulous in providing my sources. Why is everyone so afraid of providing their sources? Are you thinking that maybe if we know where you got it, the book might seem a little suspect, or maybe that verse doesn't exist? I have to ask these questions, okay? So this is something that I was given. The Islamic Education Center of Houston celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. The children's choir sang, "Khamenei is our leader, we are his soldiers." Okay, so the Ayatollah Khamenei is the leader of the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, which is Iran. For children in America to be singing his praises and referring to themselves as his soldiers is alarming, to say the least. Now, just a point of interest, this is in the preamble to the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So this is just housekeeping before I start the main topic. In the Constitution of the Republic of Iran, it says, a religious army, chapter heading, in the formation and equipping of the country's defense forces, attention must be paid to faith and ideology as basic criteria. The army of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps are to be organized in conformity with this goal, and they will be responsible not only for guarding and preserving the frontiers of the country, but also for fulfilling the ideological mission of jihad in Allah's way. That is, extending the sovereignty of Allah's law throughout the world. This is in accordance with the Quranic verse, and I'm going to skip over this, I'll go to the full one. Against them, make ready your strength to the utmost of your power, including steeds of war. Strike terror into the hearts of your enemies, of Allah and of your enemies, and others besides, whom ye may not know, but whom Allah doth know. Whatever you shall spend in the cause of Allah shall be repaid unto you. That is Quran 860. In the Constitution, they just have the first opening piece there. So this is in the Constitution of Iran. This is a declaration of warfare against the world to impose the Sharia and Islam throughout the world. But of course, as we know, it's a small minority, so it's okay. If you're killed or raped by a small minority, it's acceptable, as people would have us know.
Now, we just had an interesting comment. John N. says Sharia equals Noahide, and we're going to get into that tonight, and we're going to show how utterly false that statement is. So, John, kudos to you for posting up the most absurd comment so far for the show, and we'll be happy to completely debunk that here in the rest of this episode.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be fascinating. If you can give us some proof of that, that would be great. You can, feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, here's the thing is we got to start actually fact-checking things before we regurgitate them. And, it's like, just because you hear a rumor doesn't mean it's true. And this series is about learning to fact-check. You don't want to be like, some of these other shows out there that just regurgitate every stupid lie that you hear. So we're trying to get people to start using critical thinking and using the trivium and fact check. So good on you, John, for setting yourself up as an example there.
I've asked people, why is it that people have made claims about the Talmud, saying that these things are in the Talmud, that literally the Talmud says Jews can eat children, okay? Saying that you can rob the goy. Fine, whatever, that's what we said. Now, when I show similar statements or precise statements or even more violent statements in the Quran that are worse than anything that is claimed or either equal of anything that is claimed about Judaism, people are like, yeah, well, that's okay if the Muslims do it. It's fine. That's not a problem. So we can verify for a fact, but because I'm giving the citations, I'm giving the passage, the chapter, the author, the works, but no one is able to give me the actual, they'll tell me, the Talmud says that you can boil babies alive and eat them. And I'm like, okay, which page is that on? What's the chapter? I don't get that. No one has that. Cowards, all of you, for not providing that information.
Yeah, now, and here's the thing is all of these people constantly say, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. Let's not look at Islam. They're not a threat. It's the Jews, it's the Jews. And we constantly have shown through the last series, and we will into this series also, how the actual citations do exist in Islam. And all of us only want us focused in one direction. Why is that? Why, and just put it in the context like we used at the beginning of the last series, why only look at the Crips and not the Bloods? It's absurd. So we're trying to get people past, these things. So anyway, let's continue on there, Lloyd.
So now, according to Muhammad, murdering non-Muslims is the covenant that God made with Muslims, that Allah made with Muslims, shall we say. Quran 9:111. Indeed, Allah has purchased from the believers their lives and their properties. In exchange for that, they will have paradise. They fight in the cause of Allah, so they kill and are killed. Right? They fight in the cause of Allah, so they kill and are killed. I thought jihad was all about, self-improvement, but apparently not. It is a promise binding upon him in the Torah and the Gospel and the Quran. Right? And who is truer to his covenant than Allah? So rejoice in your transaction which you have contracted, and that which is the great attainment. So in exchange for paradise, you have to kill and be killed in the way of Allah. That is actually a stipulation. That's the covenant in Islam. So that's the housekeeping from the previous discussions, and just to bring attention to this, and I'll move on to the section talking about the 7 laws of Noah. I see we've got lots of fascinating comments. So the 7 laws of Noah are biblical laws. These are found in Exodus. This is the story of after the flood, God kills all people, and Noah and his family are the only survivors. And after the flood, so it's a set of laws for the children of Noah. So all of humanity, in other words, so according to Christian and Jewish tradition, all of humanity were given this covenant and we all became children of Noah. So after the flood, he gave a promise that all mankind will never be killed by flood again, right? So that's biblical. Now, note Leviticus 18.5, "You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. I am Yahweh," right? So God commands that we should keep his statutes and keep his judgments because there's life in them, right? Jesus comes to refresh that if we look in the New Testament, because I'll be referencing all of these. And so a set of laws for the children of Noah, that is all of humanity, because Noah means rest. He's the son of Lamech, father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. He is the builder of the ark, which saved his family from the destruction of the world, which God sent on the world by the flood. And he became the new head of the human race because his family were the only survivors of the flood. That's from the Lexicon Concordance. Right? So the 7 laws of Noah are prohibitions against denying or cursing God, worshipping idols, murder, adultery and sexual immorality, theft, eating flesh and drinking blood, right, from living animals, and the obligation to establish courts of justice. So these are 7 basic...
Wait. That's the same as Sharia law. You're supposed to eat babies and murder people and steal stuff. And so apparently those are the same as Sharia law. Wow. Okay.
Well, now I have been watching, people have been sending me videos, and I've been reading on the internet. I have literally seen that these laws are going to lead, and these are nominal Christians supposedly saying this, these will lead to the beheading of Christians. These will lead to mass imprisonment. These are the words of God in the Bible, right? So now it should be noted that 6 of these laws are derived from Genesis. 5 of these laws are in the 10 Commandments, right? These are the precursors to the 10 Commandments, and these are precursors. 9 of these 10 Commandments are repeated and renewed in the New Testament. So 5 of these become the 10 Commandments, and 9 of the 10 Commandments are repeated and renewed in the New Testament. And the New Testament quotes the Old Testament 855 times directly and another 138 times indirectly. Now, the covenant of Noah is in Genesis 9:8-17. It applies to all of humanity and all other living creatures. In this covenant, God promises never again to destroy all life on earth by flood. Genesis 9:11. He creates the rainbow as the sign of everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And I'll read this to you. Genesis 9:8-17 in the New Revised Standard.
Would you mind bringing that over to the other side of the screen there just to make it easier?
To the left side?
Yeah.
Is that better?
I just mean to where the side where you have Firefox open there. Or you can't. Yeah, there you go.
I moved it.
Okay, it's just showed up. All right, thank you.
Okay. So God says to Noah, "I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations." The covenant between me and the earth, right? So this is the word of God to all mankind. Now, the laws are referenced in Genesis 9:4-6 as a prohibition on murder, eating living flesh and drinking blood in courts of law. Now, the Torah, or the laws of Moses, were not yet given, right? It says in however, flesh with its lifeblood in it, you shall not eat. I will demand your blood for the taking of lives. That is, there will be punishment for murder. Now, they're derived from God's divine demands addressed also apparently to Adam, right, who were the progenitors of mankind, and thus are regarded as universal, because these were God's commandments to the founders of humanity. So 5 of them, again, are in the 10 Commandments. These are the 7 laws of Noah in the left column. Do not deny God or commit idolatry. Do not misuse the name of God. Do not murder. Do not engage in sexual immorality. Do not steal. Do not eat of a live animal or drink its blood. And establish a legal system to enforce the law. Now, the first one matches the first two commandments in the Ten Commandments. I'm the Lord thy God who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not misuse the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Now, the original Hebrew, I know we use take in English. The original Hebrew has the word carry, and the translation of that would be the meaning of that would be to misuse, right? To, in other words, to commit evil in the name of God. Do not murder, right? Thou shalt not murder. Do not engage in sexual immorality or adultery. Thou shalt not commit adultery in the Ten Commandments, and thou shalt not steal. There you go. So those are the 5 direct correlations between the laws of Noah and the Ten Commandments. Now, these are, as I said, these are literally the words of God. They're in the Ten Commandments. If the laws of Noah are a conspiracy to take over the world, then the Ten Commandments, well, if the laws of Noah are a Jewish conspiracy to take over the world and behead Christians and enslave everyone, then the Ten Commandments are a Christian conspiracy to take over the world and behead everyone. You know, it makes no sense. This is the word of God. So now the laws of Noah were established in 2105 BC, whereas these, the Ten Commandments, apparently are recorded in 1313 BC. Now, the Ten Commandments are the first 10 of the 613 commandments given by God to the Jewish people that are found in the Torah. That is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, right? So they form the foundation of Jewish ethics, behavior, and responsibility. So the commandments are mentioned in order twice in the Torah, once each in the book of Exodus and the book of Deuteronomy. Now, someone did mention the Code of Hammurabi at one point, right? Should I mention that, the differences with the Code of Hammurabi?
Sure.
Okay, so someone did mention Hammurabi and the similarities, but there are vast dissimilarities. George Barton, PhD, is one of the best scholars on the subject, and he says that the Ten Commandments, for instance, and the Mosaic law is not dependent upon Babylonian laws. In fact, it's a departure. The differences show there's no direct borrowing. For instance, Mosaic law repudiates the ancient laws, the Hammurabi laws, of executing the children of lawbreakers. Now, these were regarded as being evil and thus rejected, right? So Jewish law led to a different concept of ethics and morality. Now, let's go to Deuteronomy. Anything interesting in the comments so far?
Just people think that, there's no way that, the only way that Sharia law would be straight up war imposing Sharia law in the West. We already see this happening in Europe. All they have to do is build a few mosques, take over a few neighborhoods, and then they start spreading this stuff. You don't need all out straight up war for this. We already see it happening. We already see, Islamic, I was just going to say, we already see Islamic communities popping up all over the United States, even in the Midwest, where they start imposing this stuff. And they put in a mosque, and then they inch it out and inch it out and inch it out. If you read the Islamic texts, these agendas are stated very clearly. And so, it's quite ignorant to say that it would never happen when it already is. And I keep mentioning that there is a bait and switch going on. We're only supposed to be looking at Zionists and not this other group. Meanwhile, they're sneaking in the back door, and it's like, we got to stop with this, look over here mentality. You got to pay attention to all angles and all possibilities. Go ahead, Lloyd.
So jihad, violent jihad with car bombs blowing, things blowing up is the exception rather than the rule. Most jihad is of the tongue, of the wallet, and of the pen. Right? There's more than one kind of jihad. Most of it is the stealth jihad, infiltration. So it's using money, using people to infiltrate various places so you don't see it. That's why you don't think it's happening. So Deuteronomy 18, 10, 11, right? Now, the Jews were the very first of the people of the old times to abandon the practice of child sacrifice. They were explicitly forbidden by God to do this because this was being followed by the Canaanites who were worshiping their gods like Moloch. So he says, there shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interpret omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or a medium, or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead. For whoever does these things is an abomination to God. The Lord your God has not allowed you to do this. Now, the first 5 books, the books of Moses, are the Torah. This is the law of Moses. This is the law of the Jewish people. The 613 mitzvot are to be found there. These are the commandments. Now, it should be noted the 613 mitzvot of the Torah are only binding on the descendants of those who accepted the commandments at Sinai, right? And upon those who voluntarily convert to Judaism. Otherwise, those rules are not applicable to anyone else. The laws of Noah are applied more leniently to non-Jews than to Jews because non-Jews, according to Jewish tradition, do not have the oral Torah to guide them in interpreting the laws. Now, worshipping God in the form of a man, according to traditional Judaism or rabbinic Judaism, would constitute idolatry for a Jew. However, according to modern sources and according to the modern consensus, the Christian worship of Jesus does not constitute idolatry for non-Jews. Now, according to rabbinic tradition, now the early biblical Judaism is not exactly the same, and we'll go into depth in a later episode to the rabbinic Judaism. There's a difference. There was a change historically. Now, according to rabbinic legislation, idolatry is one of 3 sins, in addition to sexual immorality and murder, which a Jew must die for rather than to transgress. That's one of the burdens of being a Jew. No idolatry, no sexual immorality, and no murder. Now, I'm highlighting these because there's lots of interesting things I've seen said in the comments previously. So
yeah, I want to mention one. Nolan says, I'm against Islam and Judaism because both are not compatible with Christian Euro nations. So, if the Ten Commandments... If the Ten Commandments, it's like obviously the Old Testament is part of Christianity, so that's a rather absurd statement, Nolan.
Yeah, because then you got to toss the 10 Commandments out, and you've got to. Besides, the reason I mentioned earlier, the New Testament references the Old Testament nearly 1,000 times, 983 times, if you include all the references, right? I showed a list earlier. So the first 6 of the 7 laws of Noah were apparently given to Adam in the Garden of Eden. The 6th law, to not eat live animals, was not needed at that time because Adam apparently did not eat any animals in the garden. Now, when God established his covenant with Noah, he added the 7th law, which was to establish courts of justice, and the 6th law then became applicable. Now, a non-Jew who abides by the laws of Noah is considered a righteous Gentile according to Judaism, and he earns a reward in the afterlife, right? If his obedience is coupled with the knowledge that the laws come from God. Now, Christians and Jews do claim to worship the same God, right? Now, there may be theological debates about that. I mean, we'll discuss that in the future, but we do agree that we worship the same God. We have the same Bible.
Right. See what they do. We have all these slippery slope fallacies, and Nolan says, where'd it go? Judaism is rabbinical and has nothing to do with Moses, etc. And then somebody else says, where did it go here? Something to the effect of, control of the media is good. It's like a slippery slope fallacy there, or it's a non sequitur. Because we're showing the actual text of what these things say, and we're trying to distinguish from what the Torah actually says to what the oral traditions of the Talmud says and the Pharisees. Now, of course, Jesus came out against the Pharisees, and people need to learn to distinguish one from the other. I'm going to start calling them Talmudic detractors and not Jews, because all of these people who sit there saying Jew, all they do is confuse which group is which. And how do you have an atheist Jew, first of all? Judaism is a religion, and I don't, and I had Professor Shlomo Sand on the show about 8-9 years ago exposing that they made up the Jewish race idea in the 1700s, and people need to realize that these are separate groups and separate entities, and when you use these broad-stroked, paintings of Jews and all of this, all you're doing is spreading ignorance, and if these people in the chat, if they're claiming to be Christian, what we should be doing is expressing love and not, this sort of childish mentality that's going to, disparage certain groups and prevent people from coming together. So, we have to watch this ignorance, really.
Yeah. Well, also, I make a very clear distinction between Islam, which is an ideology, just like communism or Nazism or fascism. Those are ideologies. And Muslims, who are people. I talk about Islam. I talk about the set of ideas. I talk about communism, not people. I don't mention John Smith is a communist. He's an asshole. I don't say that. I say communism says. The doctrine of communism says. Now, what happens is, though, that you find that people who talk about Jews and Judaism go out of their way to slander people, Jews, individuals. Right? I'm talking about the ideas, and I separate the people from the idea, but no one seems to make that distinction when talking about Judaism. They don't talk about the Judaism, the religion, rabbinic Judaism as a separate strand, let's say, for argument's sake, as a separate thing from biblical Judaism, and Jews as people.
And Islam is entirely innocent of any wrongdoing. And if you bring that up, you're an Islamophobe,
Yeah.
Never mind that you provide hundreds of citations on screen over, 2 months. They can't deal with the citations, so they deal in childish sandbox name calling. Islamophobe.
Yeah. So now covenants. Now God made many covenants. If you look through the text, now I'm working on this from an academic point of view. God made many covenants with people over many years, right? The covenants would generally be a promise given at a particular time at a particular place, right? And some of the covenants are permanent and some are temporary, right? So this is the foundation as we go forward. And so we'll work through the Torah so that you understand the Old Testament, which is what Christians call it, whereas it's called the Torah or the Tanakh for Jews, right? And the Old Testament was meant to be temporary. The covenant of the Old Testament is meant to be temporary. It was not meant to be the ideal law for all time. It was supposed to be the Messianic era. The Messiah was to arrive, and then you'd have the New Testament, which is the new covenant, right? Now, notice that in the New Testament, 9 of the 10 covenants, 9 of the 10 commandments still appear. The only one that does not appear is keep the Sabbath holy, right? So, yeah, that's one interesting point. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of passages that are relevant to some of these covenants and changes that occur. Acts 15, 24 to 29, for as much as we have heard, certain people which went out from us, this is the words of Paul, certain people which went out from us have troubled you with words, subverting your souls, saying, ye must be circumcised to keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. Notice, even Paul says, and there's 2 places that I know of where Paul says this, that people have infiltrated the church and have attempted to subvert the church. So spies have entered and have attempted to spread false messages, right? Then that's verse 24. If you look at 28, it seemed good to the Holy Ghost and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary things. Now, these necessary things at that time would be the laws of Noah and the laws of Moses, right? What he's referring to here, as you get into that, is he's referring to rabbinic Judaism, which he considered to be a yoke and bondage. So he was then speaking in the same vein as Jesus, who criticizes rabbinic Judaism. That's a separate issue. Now, notice he references the Old Testament and the laws of Noah in verse 29, that ye abstain from meats offered to idols, and from blood, and from things strangled, and from fornication, from that from which if you keep yourselves, you shall do well. Paul references in the New Testament the laws of Noah. Now, if the father of the church is referencing the laws of Noah, then I don't know how these are a satanic conspiracy to take over the world and behead Christians.
And, and the reason, there's that guy, what's his name, Savage or whatever, that debunks vegans and vegetarians online, but he promotes drinking animal blood. This is strictly satanic.
Oh, wow. Yes.
It's strictly satanic, and it's specifically spoken against at least 19 times in the Bible. And we did a whole series, Caleb Thomas and I did, on exposing vampirism back in October. So, that's why you don't do that stuff. And I've sent the Savage guy, I've sent him these citations. I posted them to his videos before, but, he's doing exactly the antithesis of what the Bible says. You don't drink the blood because the blood is the life. If you can have the blood drained out of you and you die. And this is why vampires want young blood specifically, which we've exposed on the show, because that gives them younger, rejuvenated life. And so this is why it's not done. So anybody who's promoting that, be careful of, he may not even know that it's satanic, but it is satanic.
Right. Someone mentioned, so I take it marriage at the age of 3 was not debunked. I can assure you it's debunked. We will get into that.
And I meant to answer that. This episode is not about the Talmud. We're going into the Torah first, as we explained at the start of the show.
I will reference the Talmud in a couple of places. I will certainly mention it, but that's merely just to gloss over a few specific points. The Talmud's a separate episode. We are talking about the Torah. And I'm also providing passages which talk about specific things that are common in the culture, where people talk about. Now, Romans 2:25-29, circumcision. Now, there's a lot of debate about what is a Jew, and I don't want to get into depth of that, but I want to give you a few points to think about so you can have some things that you can research yourself. It says here in Romans 22, verse 28, a man is not a Jew because he is one outwardly, nor is circumcision only outward and physical. A man is a Jew because he is one inwardly, and circumcision is a matter of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the written code. Now, I'm not sure, Romans, is that Paul speaking again? It's a case of, he says, look, to be a Jew doesn't mean that you're born in Israel. It means that you've accepted those commandments of God and you've become a Jew in spirit. So you've joined God's chosen people. So that's an interesting discussion around that. When people talk about, well, they're not Jews. Well, it says here that Jews are people who are not just ones outwardly because of circumcision. In fact, there's a fairly complex discussion that goes on. If you're circumcised and you break the law, what value is circumcision? But if you're not circumcised and you keep the law, isn't that of value? So yeah. Now, there was the Jerusalem Council, the apostles in Jerusalem. So these passages I've just read are in context of the Jerusalem Council, which met to address the issue of Gentiles' place in the early church. Now, originally, the apostles were attempting to convert Jews, and they weren't finding great success. But also, Jesus did say, send out my messengers to all nations. So the question before the council was, must Gentiles be circumcised according to Mosaic law in order to be saved? Right? And these passages also reference the laws of Noah as said by Paul, right? Now, notice the apostles said no to the circumcision because it's circumcision of the heart and of the spirit. It says we are not saved by keeping the law. Now, this again is a reference to rabbinic Judaism, right? It's a rebuke to the rabbis. However, to promote peace within the early church, the council advised Gentile believers to avoid 4 things, of which eating the blood was included, which is again a reference to the laws of Noah. So if the laws of Noah are a conspiracy, a satanic conspiracy to decapitate Christians and take over the world, then we need to sit down with Jesus and the 12 apostles and say, what were you guys up to? Because
John Cassidy, they keep mentioning this, and I already brought this up a few minutes ago. Jews don't own the media, LOL. Again, we're going into the actual text. We're trying to get people to think a little more deeply than Jews. There's rabbinic Judaism, which came from the Pharisees that was exposed by Jesus. There's true Torah-following Jews, etc. You have to have a little bit more brain power than just making comments like that.
No, a lot of people are referencing John Q. Made Stuff Up, who wrote a book called, Stuff I Made Up, right? But
stuff I made up.
These people don't seem to actually go back to the primary sources, the original texts, right? Because these things say all sorts of things, but this is in the original text. This is, so these things are commenting, these books and things are commenting on, these texts, but this is what the original text is. That's why I'm bringing up the original text, what it says. If there's a problem with this, you need to talk to God about it. So now Matthew 19, 16 to 21. Okay, again, Jesus specifically references the laws of Noah. So if there's a problem with the laws of Noah, I suggest you get Jesus on the phone and have a chat with them. Why do you ask me about what is good? Jesus replied, so a man came to Jesus and asked, Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life? Why do you ask me about what is good? Jesus replied, there's only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments. Which ones? He inquired. Jesus replied, you shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. Honor your father and mother and love your neighbor as yourself. Again, a reference certainly to the laws of Moses, but also to the laws of Noah, because they're the same laws. So Jesus is saying these are necessary for eternal life. All these I've kept, the young man said. What do I still lack? And he says, sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasury in heaven. Then come follow me. Now, these are references in the New Testament to the laws of Noah. So they were not abolished. If you look at the words of Jesus and you look at the words of the apostles, they were not abolished even in the New Testament. Right? Now, again, if we look at Acts, the book of Acts 15, 6 to 10, abstain from meats offered to idols, from blood, things strangled, and fornication. Okay? So now let's look at the 10 commandments. Do not deny God. Now, the original Hebrew says the 10 statements, right? Do not commit idolatry. So there's a prohibition against idolatry. In Judaic tradition, it says that non-Jews do not have to know God, but they should disregard false gods. Now, idolatry was once a very powerful temptation. It was the norm. If you look at the stories in the Old Testament, and I'm looking at this as from an academic point of view, idolatry was once a powerful temptation, right? It is the second of the 10 commandments, and it is prime of the negative commandments, right? The idols were given the names of God to try to capture the essence of God. And this was an abomination to God because it was misusing his name. It was doing evil in the name of God. Now, that is the only commandment where God does not forgive, right? And it says, do not blaspheme God. You shall not use the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. In other words, he will not forgive. Now, I have a question here. Now, if you as a Christian believe that the God-given laws of Noah are satanic and a curse upon humankind, and I've seen all sorts of hysteria on the internet, then I would say that you have been tricked into breaking the law against cursing and denying God. That is blaspheming God. That is saying that God is evil, that the law of God is evil. If you're a Christian and you're saying this, and I've seen many, many videos and articles written by Christians stating that these laws are Jewish and wicked and evil. Well, it's the law of God. It's in the New Testament. Jesus recommends them. Paul recommends them. Then you are blaspheming. You have been tricked. You have been deceived. So who wants you to do this and why? And if you believe that the laws of Noah are a deception, then I believe that you have fallen for a deception. You have been fooled into breaking the first 2 commandments.
Exactly right. Now, and so the question then becomes, who is promoting this agenda that the Noahide laws are a deception and inverting everything again, and then getting people to go the other direction. So, clearly it's not Torah following Jews because they follow the Torah, which these are their laws as well as everyone else's. So then the question becomes, who is promoting this nonsense and telling us not to follow the Noahide laws and the 10 Commandments? So if you've fallen for that, you're a victim of the deception, and you need to wake up and stop spreading such nonsense.
All right. So again, law 3, you can see thou shalt not murder. This is here. This is from the Noahide laws. It's also in the 10 Commandments. Okay. Now,
hold on. Let me just read this quote before you go on there. Edward Sims says, Matthew 5:17, KJV version. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. Oop, and it just skipped out. I am come to destroy, but fulfill. What's that?
I'm not come to destroy.
Right. Yeah, and he didn't get the whole quote on screen there, unfortunately.
It's Edward Swim, Matthew 5:17.
Yeah, I was just pulling it up. Thank you.
All the prophets, I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill the law. So I'm trying to approach this from an academic point of view, stating, look, these are the facts, these are the words in the text, right? You can see my screen, you can see all my references, you can ask me, I can click on them, we can go look at them. So if these are laws that Jesus himself says to follow to gain eternal life, and that God himself says in the Bible, then who is it that you're listening to that's telling you that these laws are satanic? And thereby you are literally breaking the first 2 commandments. In fact, the first 3. Why would you do this? Why would you believe this? So
yeah, and and then using the the oral tradition from the Talmudic Jews against all Jews, and then spreading all of this hatred all over the internet against the wrong people. I mean, people got to grow up and learn to focus on the real issue. And thanks, Inquisitor, or no, who was that? Sorry, Infinity Splitdoff 456. Thank you for your donation. He says, folks, when Jan puts out thorough journalism that shatters the social engineers program of promoting psychedelic drug use while he helps save lives, Jan won't get a huge corporate sponsorship. He's asking for support. Try to kick in $5 or $10, and thanks so much for that. And so please, do support the show. We really appreciate it. My channel was shut down for a month and a half for, using Alex Jones's platform to, expose psychedelics and whatnot. And it's only been on now. This is only the second show we've been able to do on the main channel. So greatly appreciate any support. And obviously we're in a new place here. Just got moved.
I've got a guy saying I'm trying to build a case for biblical veganism.
Yeah, there is no case for biblical veganism. What is it?
I'm trying to build a case for reading the books. Instead of just believing stuff, go read the books, check the citations.
Oh, yeah.
Read a little bit, use your intelligence. I'm from Africa, where we have terrible education, and I can find this in 3 minutes on Google.
Yeah.
Why can't you? You're from the first world.
Yeah, correct. And, and you're living in Warsaw, Poland, which probably has better internet speeds than us at this point. But, exactly right.
I can get gigabit here. Yeah. So now some responses to the previous discussion where we raised some of these issues. And if you see here, Jews do eat children, right? Remember, Jews were the first to abolish, according to the will of God. He told them, you will not follow in the ways of the idolaters. That's all over the Old Testament. Jews do eat children. They said, no, you will not do that. That is an abomination in the sight of the Lord, right? Now, that would be according to Christian tradition, it would be an abomination. And so according to Jewish tradition, it would be an abomination. If you can find my citation in the Talmud, which everyone loves to do, great. Please show me. Give me the page reference. Give me the chapter number, the verse, like I do. I do those things. Osrage, they also mutilate children. Okay, so it says in the Talmud you're allowed to rob the goy. I'll discuss that. We'll get to that point. Adam Green says the Noahide laws made criticizing the Jews illegal. That would be Noahide law number 6.2 3/4, which didn't make it in time for publication.
Right.
And then we have a comment here from an individual stating, I can't read Bible on tape. Okay, lots to say, but can't read. And then, of course, I discussed where Islam explicitly calls Jews rats, snakes, pigs, lizards. And it says, don't forget, Islam explicitly says Muslims are the best of creation and Christians and Jews are the worst of beasts. It explicitly says that. It names us, right? But he's going, okay, then the fake Jews that look like rats, is that better? I never said Jews, I said people that look like rats. And then he says something about, a few words for me. And then it literally says pedophilia is okay. No, it does not. Give me the citation. If it literally says that, give me the citation. I'm waiting for it. I've given hundreds regarding Islam. I've given page numbers, authors, chapters, verse, book names, the works. Why has not one of you cowards given me a citation? Okay, someone called me a white Jew. I'm a black guy from Africa, but okay. Apparently my South African accent is Jewish. Hell, I don't know. It's quoted in the Talmud, a rabbi is permitted to sleep with his dead wife. Give me the citation. If it exists, Edward Swim. If it exists, give it to me. Let us see it. If it is there, quote it. Give us the page, give us the link, give us the passage, the chapter, the verse. If it exists, quote it. Why are you afraid? Not one of you. Every one of you is a coward because you do not give me citations. Give me these citations. Right?
Yeah, Dashing Rogue just posted up a super chat. He says, I have heard criticism towards the Talmud. I have never heard of the Noahide when it comes to the Jewish laws. What are the common arguments against the Noahide law? We've already, covered some of that above, but, do you want to just...
Okay, so when it comes to Islam, the common level of understanding is between zero and soaked in propaganda. When it comes to Judaism, the common level of understanding is somewhere between zero and hysterical old woman.
Right.
So I've been watching numerous videos. I will get to one specifically. In fact, I'm about to mention one specifically. I have seen very slickly produced. I've been watching stuff on YouTube and reading articles. They say that the Noahide laws are a satanic conspiracy to take over the world. The Jews are planning to implement these and enforce them upon the world.
Thou shalt not murder.
Ooh. The beheading of Christians. And I've seen articles that are really long. I mean, we're talking about going for pages. And I'm like, are they serious? And they're talking about, and I'm like, but this is the word of God. Literally the word of God in the Bible. It's the word of Jesus too, for that matter, and the apostles. So this is what I'm hearing. So let me go on. So I watched the video. This is the link here.
Just really quickly, Justin Lee, and great on you, Justin. And he was in there last week, but he says, I defended you and left that cult, Lloyd.
Thank you. I saw that and I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it.
And by the way, Justin, I've been meaning to write you all week. Thank you for the birthday present that you mailed to me last week. I greatly appreciate that. I've been meaning, like I said, to get back to you all week.
Now, on the right side, I've got Noahide laws in Christianity, allied against Torah. Someone sent me that link. It's on YouTube. Have a look here. Check it later or whatever. And very slickly produced, very professionally done. Now, to reference a couple of things that are said, it's 4 minutes and 5 seconds in the video. He talks about Talmudic Noahide laws. No, these are biblical Noahide laws. The word of God, right? It's not Talmudic, it is biblical. It's in the Old Testament. If he's a Christian, how come he doesn't know that? And he says, under the Noahide laws, and I cut this from the video, under the 4 minutes and 5 seconds up to about 4 minutes, 30 seconds, under the Noahide laws, it is illegal and punishable by death for a non-Jew to keep Torah. That's right. The Noahide laws do not allow so-called Gentiles to practice Torah like at all. This is literal quoting it. They believe that Torah is forbidden for non-Orthodox Jews to participate in, and that also violation should be punishable by death. I'll click the link, bring up the video on the right-hand side. You can see it again. Go to 4 minutes and 5 seconds in this video. There it is, Noahide laws in Christianity. Okay, I'm going to get rid of it again. So now the video quotes specifically, and I did tell a couple of people I would be referencing this specific point. The video quotes the Melachim u'Milchamot, which is a two-part book on the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, right?
First five books of the Old Testament.
No, this is a two-part commentary.
Okay, I'm just saying the Tanakh is, but yeah.
Oh, the Tanakh is the Old Testament. This is a two-part commentary written by Maimonides, who is the prime Jewish scholar, right? Very famous Jewish scholar. He's like the equivalent of Plato or, one of those Aristotle in the Judaic tradition. So he wrote, and this relates to the history of the Israelites and their kings. And it is a history from David's passing until Babylonian exile. So a history of 837 to 423 BC. In other words, a period that ended 2,500 years ago, right? So now he quotes from what's called the Mishnah Torah, which is the book that Maimonides wrote. He's not quoting from the Talmud himself, although he implies he's quoting from the Talmud itself. He's not. Now, the Mishnah Torah, the second law, is the name used in the Bible to designate the book of Deuteronomy, which is a summary or review of the rest of the Torah. Now, Maimonides' Mishnah Torah was intended to be a summary of the entire body of Jewish religious law. Now, so he quotes this and he says, now he shows us, as I go to the video, look from 4 minutes, 5 seconds to about 4:30, and he talks about, so the reference in the book is talking specifically about the laws that were in effect in the day up to 423 before Christ, 2,500 years ago. That's what the video references. And he's claiming that, well, you know, they're going to behead you right now for reading the Torah. So the claim that he makes is that you will be killed. Jews have to kill you for reading the Torah. Jews must murder you for studying the Torah. That's the claim in the video.
Which is the Old Testament.
Which is the Old Testament. Which is the Old Testament Bible, exactly. So now he was smart enough to reference a history of King David's passing. But let me go a little later. In the same book that he references, the Melachim u'Milchamot, chapter 12, section 4, the sages and the prophets did not yearn for the Messianic era in order to have dominion over the entire world, to rule over the Gentiles, to be exalted by the nations, or to eat and drink and celebrate. Hold on, let me do that again. The sages did not yearn for the Messianic era in order to have dominion over the entire world, to rule over the Gentiles, to be exalted. Rather, they desired to be free to involve themselves in Torah and wisdom without any pressure or disturbances, so that they would merit the world to come.
Ah, good grief.
I didn't find that passage in there.
Right. Quick gives a super chat and says, appreciate the great information, John 14:6. And Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Exactly correct. And that's right. Logos, or truth. The way to God is the truth. Thank you for sharing that. So from the very same book that the guy claims that the Jews must murder you for reading the Torah, he forgets the part which says we have no interest in dominion over the world. And this is the greatest scholar in the rabbinic tradition. Okay? We have no interest in dominion over the entire world, to rule over Gentiles. We just want to study and get on with our lives because they believe that studying will give them heaven. Great. Now, I'm going to ask you another question before I go further. And I will come back to this very thing. I will go to the Torah directly, and I will reference this from the Torah, not from the Mishnah Torah, not from Maimonides' book, his commentaries. I will go straight to the Talmud, and I will go exactly to the Talmud, and we'll look at what it says there. Now, if you endorse, and many people have, if you repeat and you promote propaganda identical to what is in the Quran, in the Sunnah, the example of Muhammad, and also propaganda broadcast by Islamic extremist groups like Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Muslim Brotherhood, and Boko Haram, and others who have all declared an intention to genocide all Israelis. Are you a Muslim extremist? Or are you a propaganda ally of Muslim extremists? Or both.
Even if you're unwilling to pull the trigger. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you brought this up too, because, and why don't you bring that down on screen for a little bit longer so people can see that? And let me just move the camera window there. But, here's what's going to happen, folks. If these people who sit there going around saying Jew, 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 and doing all of this stuff in the chats and the comments, and I mean, every video for the last 2 or 3 years, it's a constant. You can't escape it. And what is being set up here is a mass genocide. And, if this mentality continues and, meanwhile, the Islamists are coming in through the back door, and then they're going to genocide all of us. But what's going to happen is, it seems to me that we're being set up to commit genocide against the Jews for another group. And, I think it's a bait and switch. That's my personal opinion of it. It's not to say that there aren't Zionist or atheist so-called Jews who aren't involved in bad stuff, or Canaanites for that matter. But then again, if you're an atheist, it's a religion and it's based on the Torah. So if you're an atheist, then how is that, again, Jewish theology? So people need to start being more specific. I interviewed Gilad Atzmon 8-9 years ago, who authored The Wondering Who, and he talks about how the the atheists are the worst of all when promoting this stuff. And again, if they're atheists, then they're not Jews. So we need to learn to be more specific. Cohen, I'm not even going to, Gold, he's just got a snarky name there. He says, get Benjamin Owen on the show. He just went rogue and lambasted Alex Jones. He needs a good red pilling. I'd be down for having him on. I've tried to reach out to him before. I never heard back, but I'm sure he and the others watch the show. I haven't heard a peep from Alex Jones since Matthew North and I put out the expose on the intellectual dark web, and since I uploaded Matt's expose on Rogan et al. Up on my channel, and I want to get Matt on again soon too, but everybody's been silent since we exposed that whole thing. So an Inquisitor is just going on and on and on. It's like, enough already with the idiot talk, dude. It's like, come on, get over your stupid self, man.
Right. So in that video I showed you, this is the exact text that he quotes, and I just read a little bit more and I found this. So it's very convenient that he can find something that references history from 2,500 years ago, but cannot find this, cannot find this statement. I find that a little suspect, So now I'm going to get specifically into the Talmud. Okay, Sanhedrin 59a, verse 6. Now, it says here in the Talmud, which apparently teaches eating children and robbing people, but whatever. We'll get into that. The descendants of Noah also commanded concerning the prohibition against consuming blood from a living animal. The sages taught, with regard to the verse, only flesh with its life, which is its blood, you shall not eat. So even the Talmud says that the laws of Noah apply to them in that sense as well. That is also applicable to them. This is the prohibition against eating a limb from a living animal. Rabbi Hanina ben Gamliel says the blood from a living animal is also prohibited in this verse. So it's prohibited to Jews as well. That's in the Talmud. The evil, let me quote, the most evil book in existence. Then give me the freaking citations with the page numbers and the references. I did it for Islam. Why can't you? You claim it's there. You tell me it's there. Why can't you give me the citations? Give me the citations so I can check them. So it continues. Blood from a living animal is also forbidden to the Jewish people in particular. Okay, be steadfast in not eating blood. Deuteronomy 12:23. Okay, so it's very clear in the Talmud that this is forbidden to Jews as well. It's not just, so if it's a Jewish conspiracy to take over the world, then it's a Jewish conspiracy to take over themselves as well. Okay, the Gemara asks, and how do the rabbis, right, who hold that there's no specific prohibition, blah, blah. The verse comes to teach the prohibition against consuming blood. Okay, they go into some detail. Now, it's very important in the future that I talk about the Talmud, about what it is and what it is not, how it is structured, the different books of the Talmud, okay, the Gemara, and so on. These are things that, that have to be discussed, so you have to understand. Now, notice the Gemara answers from the fact that the prohibition of idol worship was repeated at Sinai, and we find that God punished Gentiles for it, right? So it was stated for this group and for that group, and not only for the Jewish people. In other words, it is binding upon the Jews as well, right? So again, now notice, I want to read this. The Gemara asks, but isn't stealing less than the value of one peruta, I'm not sure what that value is, prohibited to a Gentile and permitted to a Jew? The Gemara answers, there is, because Gentiles are not apt because to grant forgiveness of debts of even less than the value of one peruta. Therefore, for a Gentile to take even such a minuscule amount is considered robbery, but Jews normally forgive such small amounts. Now, please don't, Jews forgive. Jews are told to forgive small thefts. Now, we will get into detail in this later, okay, because if you read through the Talmud, it is a book of opinions, legal opinions, debates. And you can read one verse like this that has one set of opinions by one rabbi, and the next rabbi says, I disagree. See, the Gemara challenges, the Gemara asks, the Gemara answers. So Rabbi A says this, and Rabbi B says that, and Rabbi C says, hold on, what about this? Now notice, okay, I want to read this in full so that we can talk about the Jews murdering the Christians for reading the Torah. Then we're finished with this, okay? The Gemara, we're nearly done. The Gemara challenges, but if so, let the Tanakh count this prohibition among the 7 Noahide laws. The Gemara explains, according to the one who says that the verse is referring to the Torah as an inheritance, this prohibition is included in the prohibition of robbery, as a Gentile who studies the Torah robs the Jewish people of it. According to the one who says that the verse is referring to the Torah as betrothed, as the spelling of the Hebrew word for betrothed is similar to that of the word for inheritance, the punishment of a Gentile who studies Torah is like that of one who engages in intercourse with a betrothed young woman, which is execution by stoning. And I'll repeat that. The punishment of a Gentile who studies Torah is execution by stoning. You've got them. You've got the Jews dead to rights until you get to the next sentence. The Gemara, now that's the opinion of a rabbi. That is a question raised by a rabbi, right? That's one rabbi saying, hold on, what about? And now comes the conclusion. The Gemara.
Wait for it. You can't. Wait. You're saying there's more, so that one paragraph wasn't. Oh my God! So somebody took it out of context. Gosh, no way.
Yes, way. The Gemara raises an objection to Rabbi Yohanan's statement. Rabbi Meir would say, from where is it derived that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest?
What? A high priest? But wait a second, we were supposed to be stoned, and now they're called a high priest for studying the Torah.
From that which is stated, you shall therefore keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man does, he shall live by them. I opened this talk with that quote. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my ordinances. This is God himself in Leviticus 18:5, which if a man does, he shall live by them. The phrase, which if priests, Levites, and Israelites do, they shall live by them, is not stated, but rather a man, which indicates mankind in general. Ye have therefore learned that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest.
So there you go, folks. Can the BS.
I'll repeat that. A Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered a high priest. That is the conclusion in the Talmud. If you read the first passage, the first paragraph, you'd go, oh my God, execution by stoning. Read the second one, it says, no, it's not that. Because they quote the Old Testament, they quote the Bible, they quote God's word. Keep my statutes and my ordinance, which if a man does, he shall live by them. And says, if a Gentile does this, he is considered a high priest. And notice they also say a man, which indicates mankind in general. Not only are Jews man, even Gentiles are considered man. Not cattle, man. So this is in the Talmud. So, please explain to me where all this. So someone, please, if you have a different Talmud, by all means. Now, I'm going to ask you a question again. Are you lazy? Are you naive? Are you a dupe? Are you easily led? Or are you in the same camp as Islamic extremists who say these things? Are you thus an ally to them? Because honestly, they got to be allies. I mean, is it possible for them to be this stupid to ignore the very next paragraph and take the whole thing out of context? I mean, click on the link. We will go look at it in the Talmud.
Let's do that so that, because I'm guessing that they have to be cucks for Hamas and Islam to ignore that whole second paragraph there.
And here it is. You have therefore learned that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest. That is the conclusion. Okay, so fine, guys. So when we get to the Talmud allows sex with three. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We'll get to that too. We're getting to that. Don't worry, that's coming. Now, those of you who've been making claims about that, and we're going to tackle specific passages, but those who have tackled this specific issue by saying they will kill you if you read their book, are you going to apologize? Are you going to say you were wrong? Are you going to admit it? Are you going to hate me for pointing this out?
They're going to hate you for pointing this out. I guarantee you, look at the thumbs down already for this episode. All of these people who are having to eat their words and they're not man enough to own up, so they're going to hate on you and hate on this series for telling the truth because they literally aren't man enough to own up and admit that they were wrong. You know, and
High priest of what? You know, there's that.
Right, yeah. Well, obviously a high priest of the Torah study, somebody who's a high priest in the study.
He must be considered like a high priest of, you know, the same.
High priest of what, man? It's like, oh. No, that's,
the
you know.
same status as a Jew who is a high priest. You must be considered given the same respect as a high priest in Judaism. Right, the priests of the temple.
See, you know, they have to spin and try to twist things because they can't admit that they were wrong and got cucked by these idiots who spread this crap. You know, and I just really quickly, I admit that you know, at the start of the show, I admitted that I used to spread those stupid quotes around too, and then you start checking them and you realize that they're false. So, you know, what we're trying to do is avoid a genocide from happening by exposing the truth here and exposing those who spread these lies constantly, you know, and they're still hitting the thumbs down over there because they're so caught up in their own lies and BS, they can't man up at all. I mean, they have to be cucks for Hamas. There's no other explanation how people could still hit the thumbs down button and know flat out that they're lying. So these people are obviously not Christian by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying there aren't problems in the Talmud, and we will do an episode to specifically discuss the problems we have with the Talmud, the problems we have with rabbinic Judaism, if you even know what that is. We are doing an episode. I'm not saying it's all hunky-dory, but tackling specific, if I can prove numerous lies, right, doesn't that bring a lot of things into question, right? Why can people find the first paragraph that says, oh, if you study the Torah, they must kill you by stoning, but they can't read the very next sentence and paste that for you?
You know, I mean, dude, you know, and how long, so when did I release the Trivium? October 2009. And how many years have we been saying, check the primary citations? So all of these people that have been spreading this, and when I started realizing, questioning things and saying, look, there was a bait and switch going on here, you know, I started getting attacked for all of this as well. So, you know, and thanks to people like Gerard in the comments, thank you for setting me straight. You know, that's someone who's man enough to own up and say, I was wrong, you know, and that's what it takes is honesty, you know, and, you know, these cucks, you know, these Hamas cucks or whatever they are, they're just going crazy, pounding the thumbs down because they're total chicken shit.
Yeah. No, I mean, someone's asked me, am I doing the Babylonia, the Jerusalem? This is Safari.org. Anyone can go there. It's not restricted to just me. It's not the Martian Talmud, I can assure you. It's the Babylonian Talmud, the common one. So to round this off, so the modern consensus in modern Judaism is that Trinitarianism, which is the worship of God as a Trinity, is acceptable among Gentiles, right? Now, Christians do say, however, that we're not saved by rule keeping, but that God requires faith in Jesus. So that is the stipulation. So that's why we're not about rule keeping as Christians. It is about faith in God, right? Not necessarily not just by works, right? Now, in Judaic tradition, of course, as I said earlier, that the laws of Noah are thought to be for all mankind because all mankind are the sons of Noah. Because mankind was wiped out, Noah survived, and he respread the earth with people. Therefore, it's not a conspiracy to spread. It's the same way that Christians would want to spread the word of Jesus throughout the world. That is not a conspiracy. That's simply an intention to want to bring that message. And it's the very same for the Jews. Otherwise, then you've got to say that there's a Christian conspiracy. Now, the final point here, in 1991, both houses of Congress, and this is something I'm addressing, this discussion addresses things that I've specifically been told or seen or sent or, you know, had people say. So I'm specifically addressing points which people have brought up. And people say, well, the U.S. government passed a resolution to implement the laws of Noah in Congress and in the U.S. government's laws, and they're going to take over the world. And yeah, sure, whatever. In 1991, both houses of Congress passed a bill signed into law by George W. Bush, H.W. Bush, that declared the laws of Noah to be the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization, the ethical values and principles upon which our great nation was founded. It's HJ Res 104 ENR. You look up that code number, you see it on the screen, you'll find it. It'll take you seconds. I went and read the whole thing. Here it is, quoted in full from the Congress page. I will click on it. It'll come up. You can see that's the link, right? That's it in full. It was also, it says here that this is before predate authenticated digital publishing. So they have it in text form because this is before they had PDFs and stuff. And people say that this is now, of course, a conspiracy to embed this. No, it says to designate one day, March 26th, 1991 is Education Day, USA. It was only for one day, the 26th of March, which is today, coincidentally. Small world. So it was merely to commemorate one day. And also, don't forget that at the time that the laws of Noah were passed, the Canaanites were sacrificing children. After 400 years of God saying to them, this is wrong, they were sacrificing children, they were having incest. And God said, look, the Jews, you are not allowed to partake of these practices of idolatry. You are my people. You need to be pure and holy. And then he said, for 400 years, I have waited for these people to sort themselves out. And he says, they have defiled the land. You need to kill them, right? And so this was a change. The laws of Noah were the first series of commandments to mankind that abolished things like child sacrifice, right? That abolished all of these idolatrous and evil practices. And therefore, they are the ethical values and principles upon which we are founded as a Western society. So this whole thing about, it's in the law. No, it's one day. Anyone can read this. Why can't you read this? You're first worlders. What stops you? That's it from me, Jan.
Great job. And please, everybody in the audience, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the alert thing on there. Send Lloyd a donation. I know Polygonal and Photon were posting your email throughout the talk. Lloyd, you want to give it again just so people can get that?
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it, guys. It takes me a lot of time. So if you'd be so kind, I would greatly appreciate it. ldejongh_pl@outlook.com is my PayPal address. Thank you, Photon. Much appreciated. Yeah, guys, you see my screen. You can see my citations. I'll email them to a couple of you that asked about it. I'll give it to Jan. Jan can pass this on. He already has a copy, in fact. You can just forward it, Jan.
Yeah, what we have is a number of people logging out and back in under fake accounts to thumb down the show because they feel their manhood is so threatened. It's just so pathetic. So please hit the thumbs up. That's obviously an agenda, and we know who that is. I mean, it's the person who has like 50 channels that have been shut down, and they log in under each one and do this crap.
Wow, I see that.
Yeah,
incredible. Look,
that's the utmost cowardice that you can reach.
So I cited the Talmud. You're seeing it on screen right now. The Talmud references the Old Testament constantly. Okay, the Talmud is an exegesis of the Old Testament. Now, I'm not saying that we will discuss some of the issues that we have from our perspective, right? But I want to do a fair analysis of this, not a hysterical old woman analysis, which is the common method today. So, yeah. Any questions for anyone?
Nothing. I mean, there's some good comments. There's some pretty dumb ones, too. And somebody's saying, but Christianity is a gentile slave cult. It's actually the opposite of that. It's when you understand that it's about living in truth or logos, that you get free of slavery and to fall into iniquity and lies. And the opposite of living in truth is to become a slave. So I don't care if you were raised a Christian. You need to go back and read the New Testament as a man and not what you remember as the little boy and take it in. That's one of the most common issues I see is people, yeah, and they hear what others tell them. But, people read it as a 7 or 10-year-old, and then they think that they've studied it and they know it when they're in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. You need to go back and read it as an adult. And, I've already, okay. It's too bad so many people are having to get blocked and banned. But, they're obviously trying to smash the thumbs down to keep this show from spreading because they're petrified that the truth will get out, and their whole gig, their whole agenda that they base all their lies on and their their troll brigades that follow them around thoughtlessly, they'll lose their audience and their whole thing. So, it's just cowardice. We know who they are. They know who they are.
Edward Swim says, I will admit I was wrong. I don't read their books. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That is very kind of you. That is very big of you.
Yeah, I've actually noticed several people man up in the chat and say that they were admitting they were wrong. So that's really good. Brian Kerr, everybody, these are old listeners to the show and whatnot. People, I see people like bringing up research that I did like more than a decade, like 15 years ago, before I became a Christian, before I've exposed MK Ultra for the last decade, and they'll try to use that against me in some sort of weak-minded, chronology fallacy. But it's like, how do you confuse, something that I wrote 10, 15 years ago, ignore the last decade of research, and then try to launch that at me as some sort of half-witted attack?
Yeah. So look, there's some questions about the Talmud that are not. This is not the forum for that. We will do an episode discussing that.
Correct. And we've already addressed that several times for those people who are wanting to dive into that now.
But I'm talking about the Tanakh, or the Torah, the Pentateuch, the written law. We will cover that in more detail next week. I'll go through that again. But I really wanted to cover the laws of Noah. That's why I kept this as the very first statement here. Right. These are the words of God. He says, keep my statutes. Now, if you are going to tell God that his words are satanic and a conspiracy to destroy humankind and enslave humankind, then you are blaspheming against God. You are denying God. And the first law in the Ten Commandments is, I have brought you out of the house of bondage, which is slavery. God abhors slavery. And you're saying that he is trying to enslave the people he loves. Now, I'm simply speaking from what I know to be the religious tradition in Christianity. So then you are misusing the name of God. You are denying God. You've been tricked into doing this. And that is evil according to Christian tradition. So God says, keep my statutes. And these 7 laws of Noah are his statutes for Christians too. And he says, I brought you out of slavery. So if you say that God is Satan and he wants to enslave you, you are denying God. You are blaspheming God. So ask yourself, think, who fooled you into doing that?
Yeah, why is it, permitted and expected in every chat of every video to repeat these same lies over and over and over? And again, Satan is the father of all lies. So if you're repeating those lies, if you're in the rumor mill, you're guilty of the same things of those that you're apparently accusing. And Satan is the false accuser. So you have to be careful of. Somebody put Daler on timeout, please. But you have to be careful for spreading those lies and that idiocy because, and I appreciate the donation, but we don't need stupid, idiotic comments made. We got to knock that stuff off. So, please support the show. Please support all of Lloyd's research. We greatly appreciate everyone's support. Thanks for all the super chats tonight. There's the Patreon button up there as well that you can click on. That's up in the upper top right corner of the screen. I've posted the link to donate directly to the show. And thanks that John in there. He's another good one that manned up tonight. Good guy. Good on you for owning up on that. And, that's what we like to see is, you have to be able to admit when you're wrong, because if we keep...
Noahide laws were rewritten by man. Like, sure, whatever.
Yeah, of course they can't support their claims or anything. They just repeat these. Yeah. Any justification to maintain the lie rather than just admitting that they were wrong.
Yeah, guys, give me a citation, give me a page number, give me a book number, give me, I'm showing you exactly where to find these things, right? Sanhedrin 59a, right? There it is, and it's, I've showed it to you. All of these things I've shown you. Now, why are you unable to provide your citations? What stops you? Is there something false? Michael Hoffman is the one to debunk. Now, okay, so several people have mentioned him. Someone
I
quoted,
have his book Judaism Discovered.
someone quoted him earlier, and they did a partial quote. They thought I wouldn't know, but I actually know the quotations direct out of Michael Hoffman's book, and they did a partial quote from the book. So look, I mean, I don't even know the guy. I don't care. Mr. Stosh, that's the guy. Yeah, Mr. Stosh. Hoffman would destroy these clowns. Look, yeah, but then Hoffman has to go and explain to, to Jesus, how come he's talking about the laws of Noah, and he's got to go to the Talmud and say, well, the Talmud says that the Gentile who studies the Talmud.
Yeah, and when you got a name call like Mr. Stosh there, you've already lost the debate. I mean, has this clown, Mr. Stosh, to use his own term against him, has he personally verified Michael Hoffman's citations? That is the question right there. And I guarantee you that
he says, I quoted from the Talmud, but no, he quoted from Michael Hoffman, supposedly quoting from the Talmud.
Right.
So
going to cite secondary rather than primary sources, which we see over and over, and even third-hand sources.
Yeah. So guys, that's my story. I mean, I've taken very specific points people have made. I've made this my notes here to discuss specific things that I've seen constantly repeated over and over. Now, these are the same things that Islamic extremist groups say. I can prove these are lies. We've just shown you, right? So yeah, why are you letting someone else do your thinking for you?
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, people, we've put out the Trivium for 9.5 years now. That's almost a full decade come October. And you people still haven't caught on to fact-checking the citations on your own. At least at minimum, pick one out of every 10 citations and fact-check it and make sure it's presented accurately. And if you find one that's inaccurate, check the next several. And if those are inaccurate, you've got someone feeding you a yarn of BS.
Yeah. As Kevin says, if we cannot identify our enemy, we can never prevail. If you're not specific.
Exactly right.
For a sniper, you can't shoot everybody. You've got to pick your targets. You've got to know. You have to have detail. It's like orange man bad. It's like all white men bad, all Jews bad. Like, no, which one? Why specifically?
Yeah, and what they do is they use a hasty generalization fallacy, sweeping generalization, and then all of a certain group are bad. All white people are bad. All white people are racist for merely being born. All white people have white privilege. Never mind the people living in the Appalachians or in Bakersfield or, even around here. There's so many people that are struggling to get by,
Yeah, someone mentioned they're going to be studying the Kabbalah via tarot. Just to revise, again, Deuteronomy 18:10-11. There shall not be found among you one who burns his son or daughter as an offering, or who practices divination, tells fortunes, or interprets omens, no sorcerers, no charmers, no mediums, or necromancers, or inquiring of the dead. Who does these things is an abomination to the Lord. Now, technically, if you're Christian, according to this rule at least, that should be something to avoid. Now, this is something Jews must avoid. Now, I mean, we have lots to discuss. This is one episode of probably what's going to be half a dozen. Hell, I don't know. But we'll get into those details. But just keep these things in mind. The Talmud is based on all of this at the end of the day. Now, I'm not saying the Talmud hasn't departed from this. Yes, it has in places. But I want to be very clear and specific and accurate and correct.
And
as opposed to lying and making things up, like all of you have. So many of you, who you are, have been doing.
And, clearly Jesus, went after the Pharisees who created the false oral tradition. And, it's a legal book and it breaks things down into minutia. It's not a book of logos. And that's why we have to get people to check the citations, get back to the Torah, and Jesus went around himself trying to convert the Jews to Christianity. What do you call a Jew who believes in Christ? A Christian. So if you're going around screaming Jew, 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 Jew in every post and doing this dumb shit, you're not helping convert people,
Josh, this isn't getting personal. Look, a lot of people have gotten personal. I've been called a lot of very racist things by people, okay? I've been called a monkey, and that's a very basic one. You haven't seen a few of those. I've been called a lot worse than a monkey. So look, unfortunately, people have said things, and I've taken some of their statements, and I've shown them in this session that what they're spreading is a lie. Either they're ignorant or they are willfully lying. I don't know which. Okay, but either way, it is wrong and it's a lie. Are they going to apologize? Are they going to hate me instead? Are they going to say they were wrong? No, they won't. You know they won't.
Yeah, and one person last week specifically said when he was proved wrong, he would apologize, but I don't see him ever being man enough to do that.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
So, all right, well, that's a good place to wrap it up, I suppose, and, we'll be exposing more of this agenda next week, and again, there'll be at least 5 more of this topic. I may have some other information on. We're thinking about exposing MK Ultra medical marijuana soon. That's a topic that's, I worked on Proposition 215 for medical marijuana in California. I was the Inland Empire coordinator for the California Hemp Initiative. I worked with Jack Hare for 18 years, and this is a subject that I've wanted to get onto for many years, so I think it's about time to.
Guy saying his grandma called him a monkey. They didn't mean it in that sense, okay? So this is not, they were pleasantly, I was called a lot worse than monkeys, like I said. So I need to ask you, I'm from Africa, okay? I have a third world passport, okay? If you guys are so freaking smart as first worlders, how come you're so stupid?
Exactly. And you know what? I got to admit, Lloyd is one of the smartest guys I've come across, and he's doing circles around, many of you out there, so it takes a lot to be able to man up and admit you're wrong and, correct yourself. And that's what being in Logos is all about. So,
should I not be angry for some of the slurs that have been directed at me? Seriously.
And Josh keeps going back to Michael Hoffman's book, Judaism Discovered. I've read some of it. I have a copy of it.
Okay.
I have a copy. Yeah. And again, this is a secondary citation. It's not to say that, the rabbinic Judaism or Pharisees haven't done a lot of bad stuff, but there is a bait and switch. We can prove that the Islamic texts, beyond any doubt, say this stuff straight out, repeatedly, over and over and over. And yet you're ignoring the 1.2 billion to focus on 16 million while this stuff is being promoted all over Europe and everywhere else.
Brotherhood is a secret society. There's 100 million members. That's like 6 times more than there are people, Jews in the world.
And it's like, hey, look over there, look over there, look over there. How about we focus on the whole issue and get to the truth and stop appealing to one person's authority? If you haven't personally fact-checked Hoffman's work, Josh, then can it go through and fact-check it yourself and distinguish which groups are which?
Yeah. Okay, that's looks. Yeah, sorry, I got a little angry, but I've taken a lot of heat, and
you have, and the audience and a lot of these people owe you a huge apology for all of the name calling that they've done at you and at me as well.
Yeah. And guys, use citations. Don't say, but the Talmud says you can rape 3-year-old girls. Show me what page is it on, please. Give me the link.
Give the link. Give the exact citation. Stop repeating dumb BS that you heard somewhere that somebody else told you that you never fact-checked. My God, how many times for 10 years I tell you people this? Oh, all right. That's a good place to wrap it up. I'm done for the night, and take care, everybody.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks all for your support and donations. Please support Lloyd, too, for all the hard work he's done and helping to enlighten y'all. And good night.
Thank you, guys. Good night.